So last night, Ukraine intercepted just 5% of Russian missiles. 33 got through. That's a real problem. And this shortage in missile defense capability is arguably the biggest challenge facing Ukraine today. I mean, while Ukrainian stocks of Patriot interceptors have decreased significantly, Russia has increased their missile production. They found a weakness and are exploiting it right now. Now, bottom line up front, this is not sustainable for Ukraine over the long term. They have to find a way to either increase their interception rate or decrease the Russian launches through a variety of means. But this is not a scenario Ukraine has been in, arguably, for the entire war. This is serious. Now, the Kyiv Independent, in talking about the attacks last night, said that at least 9 people have been killed and more than 30 injured. They say the attack gave residents only a few minutes warning before impact, leaving many trapped beneath the rubble of their homes. Russia's use of ballistic missiles meant those living in the capital had little time to take cover from the second mass Russian attack in just 48 hours. The Ukrainian Air Force, providing some details here, said that 185 drones and 35 missiles were utilized in the attack, saying that they were able to intercept 154 out of 185 drones, so greater than 80% interception rate. Pretty good. Ukraine's had better in the past, but not bad. On the other end, only 2 out of 35 missiles were intercepted. They did add that 3 didn't reach their target, so 30 out of 35 struck home. So a 5% interception rate, or, on or about 85, 86, 87% of the missiles fired hit their designated target. That's a big problem. So these missile interceptors, primarily the Patriot system, are placed around strategic and important targets throughout Ukraine. So government facilities, key manufacturing in the defense industry, logistics hubs, headquarters, things like that. Russia knows where a lot of that is, but Ukraine has to date been able to pretty effectively defend those. With 30 missiles getting through, you have to read that as 30 targets may have been hit last night that had not been hit so far in this war. Again, over the next few days, weeks, months, this can compile into a major issue for Ukraine. Ukrainian President Zelensky said that there's effectively no Patriot interceptors remaining. Quote, "It is precisely this shortage of anti-ballistic missile systems that encourages Putin to carry out such attacks against human life. It is very important that our partners hear that these systems are needed not somewhere in warehouses for potential scenarios, but here and now, so the Russian war can be contained and stopped in Ukraine. Every package of anti-ballistic defense systems saves the lives of our people, and every night without them results in casualties. Thank you to everyone who is working to strengthen our defense." Now, in terms of more Patriots or more interceptors, they're not coming anytime soon. All right, so it looks like just yesterday, President Trump walked back from a pledge at the NATO summit to allow Ukraine to manufacture their own or produce their own Patriot interceptors. That's bad news. I mean, it was good news to have that. We need more people making these. That also is going to be long-term. You're talking probably a couple years before anything is really being churned out. Ukraine needs this capability yesterday, right? Because Russia is churning out more missiles right now, quite frankly, than the U.S. is churning out interceptors. And there is a global shortage of these Patriot interceptors right now. We are experiencing it in the war in Iran, but it's being felt anywhere where these would be utilized, certainly in a place like Ukraine where they're needed day in and day out. CSIS, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, a couple days ago, if you put any weight in this study, and for what it's worth, I feel like they've been pretty consistent, pretty reliable over the years, said that the United States only has around 800 Patriot interceptors remaining. Not great. For global threats, not great. So these additional interceptors certainly aren't coming from U.S. stockpiles anytime soon, and we take a long time to manufacture them. So again, Russia has identified a weak point here. They're exploiting it. The Institute for the Study of War, and this is an article from June 13th, so a little over a month old, said Russian forces are increasing the production rate and modernization of their ballistic missiles and drones. Available information suggests that Russia's monthly missile production surpasses U.S. PAC-3 interceptor missile production. So right there, they're making more missiles on a monthly basis than the U.S. is making Patriots, with a big enough stockpile that, can kind of be addressed, but the stockpile is getting rather low over here in the United States, and that's to say nothing of what it looks like in Europe and certainly in Ukraine. Now, a couple things to keep in mind here. Well, real quick, the chief researcher of the Ukrainian State Research Institute for Armament Testing and Certification, it's a long phrase there, on June 13th said that Russian forces are producing between 40 and 50 Kh-101 cruise missiles per month, between 60 and 70 Iskander ballistic missiles, and around 10 Iskander cruise missiles per month. So that number right there, they assess, is greater than U.S. monthly PAC-3 air defense interceptor production. what we have seen is this constant back and forth, this game of cat and mouse in this war. So early on, Ukraine did have some capabilities to intercept these missiles. The missiles, much more expensive than drones, like the Shahed and the Goran. So we saw Russia shift to fewer missiles, fewer high-dollar, high-cost missiles, to more drones and try to overwhelm Ukrainian air defense. And they did to a degree. I mean, we're seeing the Iranian strategy very similar in the Middle East right now. Eventually, Ukraine came up with some low-cost interceptors, and they were able to counter those pretty effectively. And before long, I mean, over the course of the last year to 18 months, it has actually been Russia on the wrong side of that cost curve, spending more on their Gorans and Shahed-style drones than Ukraine is spending on their interceptors. So Russia seems to have pivoted again. Said, well, we're going to go back to more missiles. Now, this is not exactly a one-to-one trade, and it's hard to get this data from outside of Russia, but we've seen a notable decrease in the quantity of drones used in these attacks. Again, last night, 185 drones. At the end of last year, we were seeing sometimes, 500, 600, 700 drones used a night for like multiple nights on end. We haven't seen that for quite a while. Instead, we've seen a large uptick in the missile launches. So, look, there's certainly a limitation on, say, the employees that are building these, the manufacturing facilities, on the money in the economy to produce these systems. But it does look, so I don't know exactly if it's one-to-one, all right? But it does look like Russia may have reallocated something somewhere to produce more missiles instead of drones. They are taking advantage of the shortage in ballistic missile defense because right now the Patriot is really the only effective way to deal with those. And Ukraine, for their part, having developed a very successful Shahed interceptor, have not developed, although it's our understanding that some are in production, have not developed an effective ballistic missile defense. Now, there's really two ways that Ukraine can go about doing this. One is the defense, get more interceptors or develop their own mechanism in-house, something that we think they're in the process of doing. Who knows if that's going to be a viable solution in the coming weeks, months, or even years. It's very challenging. There's a reason that the Patriot is kind of the number one system for NATO and our allies around the world. It's very good, and it's a very complicated product to manufacture. No doubt somebody is going to be able to come up with a better system at lower cost, but not right now. All right, so it's a bit of an issue. The other way that Ukraine can go about doing this, we're actually seeing day in and day out, and it's going on the offensive, right? Trying to prevent Russia from manufacturing or possibly even launching these missiles. According to the Ukrainian Unmanned Systems Forces, they just put out their July roll-up, said they hit 250 targets deep inside of Russia, the deep strikes over 500 kilometers away, and over 2,000 targets were struck in the operational zone. That's kind of the middle strike campaign between roughly 30 and 500 kilometers. So the mid and long range strikes are ramping up. That's 2,250 targets on or about hit over 30 kilometers from the front line just last month. We also got last night that the SBU hit another refinery, saying they hit the infrastructure in 3 oil refineries in the city of Ufa, a distance of 1,600 kilometers from Ukraine. They said this refinery provides the Russian army with fuel and generates a significant portion of the revenue that the Kremlin uses to finance its aggression. So that's a big piece here. The Financial Times recently put out some stats saying that Russian refineries hit by drone strikes have lost about 45% production capacity. This is one of the ways that Russia fuels their war effort. And when we look back at the production recently, it does look like there's been a decrease in drones in exchange for an increase in missiles. Russia cannot and has not, from the beginning of the war, been able to make everything they want all at once. There's priorities, there's limitations on where they're able to spend the money and how much money they have to spend. One of the ways Ukraine is going about this is trying to hit the revenue sources for the Russian military, namely their oil industry. This is not something that's going to happen overnight, but over the long term, it could have an impact on the production of missiles and drones and the quantity that Russia is able to fire in every night. Mark Montgomery from the Foundation for Defensive Democracy, is writing in the Washington Post a few days ago, had a different solution. He said, knock out the launchers. Quote, Ukraine's fleet of F-16s, which have been flying combat missions for 2 years, are older but capable platforms. However, they are currently not equipped for one of the most strategically important missions of the war, destroying Russian mobile ballistic missile launchers before they fire. The reason they can't execute this mission is not the airplane itself, it's the weapon and the targeting system. The U.S. has already approved the sale of 3,350 extended-range attack munitions, ERAMs, to Ukraine. These are 500-pound, air-launched, highly accurate standoff munitions with a maximum range of about 300 miles, capable of destroying targets under heavy electronic warfare conditions. So 300 miles on or about is similar to kind of the max range of an Iskander missile, but this would actually bring them in range because it's not one-to-one. It's not like one artillery system versus another artillery system shooting at each other. In this case, the Iskanders are aiming for Kyiv, which puts them closer to the front lines, closer to the Ukrainian border. And you would assume that the F-16s would not be launching these munitions from over Kyiv. They would probably fly a bit further east or north, or even south, I guess, technically, in loosing these munitions. So if that were authorized, if that were approved, if that were outfitted, it could be one more option for Ukraine to try to destroy some of these mobile launchers before they release those munitions. But again, bottom line up front, this is not sustainable over the long term. We're experiencing this in Iran right now. I don't have a lot of confidence that Russia will be able to win the war in Ukraine simply by terrorizing the population, striking more targets throughout the capital city, more civilian infrastructure leading into the fall and winter months. They haven't done it yet. It's hard to imagine that is going to be the one thing that changes the war, but it certainly doesn't make things easier and probably is going to limit Ukraine's ability to hold the front as they have over the course of the past couple of years. So this issue, ballistic missile defense, it's significant and it's right now. And then quick fundraiser update here. We've got a quick, small campaign running for the team over at Protective Volunteer, helping the soldiers on the Southern Front. So we've worked with them before. They just came back, said they're looking to pick up a new van for the Omega team of the GUR, Defense Intelligence of Ukraine. We've got a short video from those guys I'll play here in a second. And then maybe, if enough funds come in, a couple e-bikes for some drone teams trying to use those to infill and exfil their positions quietly. So we'll have the link in the description below. This is being run by Protective Volunteer through Ukraine Frontline, which is a registered 501c3, so every one of your donations fully tax deductible. We've worked with PAV before, incredible group. I think at the beginning of the year we raised something like 20 or 30,000 for them, picked up a couple vehicles, including a tow truck, which has been incredibly valuable. And they've regularly sent over messages that they are using that constantly to pull vehicles that otherwise might be abandoned on the front or near the front. They're able to pull those back to the rear, get them fixed, and get them back into operation. So you guys have already been incredibly helpful to the team over at PAV and the soldiers that they're supporting in the Zaporizhia direction. For those interested in ABLE, that campaign will be linked in the description below. But that's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.
We are Omega team from GUR, the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine, and we are asking you for your help to us.
Oh shit, here we go again.
And Rachel from Protective Volunteer to help us fundraising for a frontline vehicle.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава!
If there's something strange